Hey, 7:15 now at iFiber One. Well, Vic, you got a great guest on the phone line here this morning, calling in from our U.S. Capitol. He is the representative in Washington's 6th District. It's Derek Kilmer. Good morning, Derek.
Hey, good to be back with you.
Nice to talk with you, of course. We've got some great things to pass along with some legislation that you have been working on. But first, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on this historic North Korean summit that just wrapped up.
Well, I think we're still waiting for some details. Obviously, peace is good and denuclearization is good, but so are details.
Right.
And we're still, I think, waiting to see what type of verifiable process will be put in place to make sure that North Korea actually gets rid of weapons that pose a threat, not just to the United States, but to that entire region.
Do you guys get to see the signed agreement or whatever was signed between the two leaders? Do you guys get copies of that?
We'll get, yeah, but what needs to come down the road is a whole lot more than what was agreed to yesterday. You know, this is one of those where details are really going to matter in terms of what sort of inspection regime is put into place, actually having an understanding of what capabilities North Korea has right now, and what the plan is for getting rid of those. To my understanding, those sorts of specifics haven't been worked out yet, and so that's why it's, you know, I'm cautious about this kind of thing. But I think it's, listen, if we can see denuclearize North Korea, that's better for the entire world.
I would agree. I mean, it seems like they made some sort of understanding here this weekend, and I guess the devil will be in the details. Today should just be the start. That's what you say about some of your policies that are helping to address the opioid crisis across the entire country. You've had quite a few co-sponsored bills that passed. Talk to me about some of these ones and how you're able to work across the aisle with folks all across the country on this issue.
It's a really big deal. Unfortunately, we've seen just everywhere in the country be ravaged by this opioid crisis. This is not something that knows blue districts or red districts. This is something that is unfortunately affecting everybody. You've got 115 people dying from an opioid overdose every single day in our country. And unfortunately, only about 10 to 15% of those who are suffering from opioid addiction are getting the treatment that they need. And so this week, the U.S. House is taking up a number of bills focused on trying to address that problem. And as you pointed out, thankfully, a bunch of them are bipartisan bills that I'm a sponsor of. Some of them are focused on getting more providers to actually deliver substance abuse treatment, particularly for areas, unfortunately, like Mason County, where we're kind of underserved in terms of providers being able to meet the need. Unfortunately, Mason County has ranked second in our state among the counties when it comes to opioid-related deaths based on the population. So some of it's around more providers. Some of it's around getting prescribing right. One of the bills we took up yesterday that I was a co-sponsor of included some funding for research to find new ways to treat pain that are less addictive than opioids. Some of it's trying to provide more information to our care providers so that they know if someone's a recovering addict and doesn't sort of unknowingly prescribe and then discharge someone with a powerful opioid that could lead to their death. So there's thankfully been a number of bills that are, some of it's around more access to treatment, more funding for treatment. So thankfully this has been something that this week Democrats and Republicans have really come together on to try to do something about this issue.
This H.R. 449, the Synthetic Drug Awareness Act, which also was co-sponsored by Hakeem Jeffries of New York and Trey Gowdy of South Carolina, seems pretty interesting. Do synthetic drugs, did that kind of come on as a bit of a shock as the same way these e-cigarettes and vaping machines have come up, as the technology to get those devices out there or whatever moved faster than lawmakers were able to catch up on these?
Yeah, I think everyone's playing catch up on these synthetic drugs, and that's part of the bill that you just referenced. It's having the Surgeon General of the United States really look at the health effects of that rise in synthetic drug use, particularly among young people. Unfortunately, we've seen a very substantial spike in synthetic drug use among young people, and just trying to get the word out there around how lethal some of those synthetics can be, I think, is really important. We're going to be taking up another bill later this week that also addresses, unfortunately, a lot of these synthetics are just being imported from other countries, and trying to set some rules of the road to make that harder is something that's going to be taken up today and tomorrow.
Not in your district, but in the great state. Your thoughts on Seattle City Council reversing that head tax decision just a few weeks after they enacted it? Lots of pushback from the major companies in Seattle like Amazon and the like.
I spent a decade working in economic development professionally, and I'm against taxing jobs. I think we should be encouraging job growth in our state, not creating a barrier to job growth in our state. And a tax on jobs, I just think, is really wrong-headed. Obviously there's a legitimate concern up in Seattle around homelessness. Frankly, there's a concern all over our state regarding homelessness. But to me, using a tax on jobs, as the Seattle City Council was initially proposing, I think is the wrong approach.
Is this something we've seen major states and cities across the union declare emergencies, a declaration of emergency for homelessness? Is this something federally that we should look at? Is this another portion of society that just unfortunately gets pushed off into the shadows more and more as the rest of unemployment is at record lows and things like that? Is there the need for a nationwide emergency declaration so we can have a conversation about this?
Well, I think it's really important that more be done around housing affordability, and because if you look at some of the root causes of homelessness, it's complicated, right? Some of it is just we've seen rising costs of housing, and people get squeezed out. And in fact, I'm part of a coalition in the Congress that just came out with a big white paper report looking at housing affordability across the United States. There are other factors that come into play as well. Unfortunately, you saw a report out of Pierce County, and this gets back to the topic we were talking about earlier. Unfortunately, you saw a large proportion of the population, like half of the homeless population in Pierce County, has an opioid addiction. Mm-hmm. And so, when you address the opioid problem, hopefully you're also, making some impact on our homelessness problem as well.
Well, I really appreciate your time and spending time with us on the air here this morning. Are you going to be back in the district anytime soon? You're going to make some time here this weekend for Father's Day, and you got some great kids, and see you at the Alderbrook for the oyster eating challenge again, or what's the plan?
I'm planning to do that again. I'm not going to eat the oysters, but I'm happy to time them.
It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to reduce opportunities for public embarrassment, and me slurping down that many oysters over the course of a few minutes, you don't want to see that.
One of these years,
no one wants to see that.
One of these years, Derek, will get you involved in that.
But yeah, I'm going to be back we get back on Friday. One of my Father's Day traditions, speaking of eating copious amounts of seafood, up in Kitsap County in Manchester, there's an annual salmon bake, and I think most of Kitsap County shows up for the salmon bake in Manchester, and I always do I always do a couple hours serving salmon to folks up at that. So if folks are around Manchester on Father's Day, come on by and I'll serve you some salmon. And then we're going to be doing on Monday. I'm going to be doing some company visits up in Tacoma. And then I think I mentioned this to you previously. We're having a conversation with a few groups around the potential establishment of like a rural economic development fund, trying to drive. Listen, there's and to your earlier question, there's a lot of money sitting up in King County. There's a lot of business growth, a lot of job growth, a lot of money. And one of the things that we've been thinking about and talking to folks about is how do you deploy some of those dollars into areas where, Seattle's got a growth challenge. Most of the district I represent has a jobs challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we make sure that we're growing jobs, growing economic opportunity for more people in more places? And so that's really my focus. And we've been, on Monday, we're going to be having a conversation looking at some opportunities there.
U.S. Congressman Derek Kilmer, representing greatly our 6th district here in Washington. Always nice talking with you, Derek, and we'll see you before too long.
You bet.
Have
Take
a good
care.
one.
Thanks.